Today we have Maria Patterson. She's going to moderate our panel. She was an undergrad in physics, went and specialized in astrophysics and did a PhD in astrology. Astronomy. And
you do horoscope?
Big difference.
I'll reach your palm later afterward.
And now she works in a data science intensive lab that's new here on campus. So, Maria Patterson.
So I thought that we would start out, we're going to do some introductions and sort of look back to where we were when we were sitting there at many years ago. 10 years for me, I realized that I'm class of 2007, so 10 years ago, that's you guys. I'm you in 10 years, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. And then sort of progress through our careers and how we got where we are now and what we do differently. We're supposed to talk about our regrets, right? That's what they said earlier. Right, I'm Maria Patterson. I have my degree in astronomy. I decided after going to grad school I wanted to do something more involved with people, and right now I'm doing sort of data science in the Department of Medicine at the Center for Data Intensive Science at University of Chicago. So I do data science on health records and geospatial stuff, and I do some image processing on NASA Earth satellite images, and so all over the place. And we have people here who are grad students and professors and people who work in industry. So I guess we'll go down the line this way. So Jeff, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Jeffrey Marks. I'm AB 77, so I predate most of your births from in terms of my graduation from U of C. I was a biology major and decided that biology was something that I had an affinity for, and decided to go to graduate school in biology, and did at University of California, San Diego. Did a postdoc at Princeton in a molecular oncology lab, and I then got a job as a faculty member at Duke University in the Department of Surgery, where I have been since 1988. Do you want me to do anything else, or just?
Well, we'll come back.
Okay.
So hi everyone, I'm Alexander Donovan. So I got a BS in 08 in biochemistry, biological chemistry, as well as chemistry. After I graduated, I contemplated either going to graduate school for organic chemistry or law school maybe for intellectual property. But I ended up being a lab tech at Loyola University Medical Center in the pharmacology department, working on drugs involved with cardiac toxicity. And now I'm at UIC studying chemical engineering, working on targeted drug delivery for treatment of bleeding disorders.
My name is Ezra Teitelbaum. I was graduated from UChicago in '04. I guess my experience in undergrad was a little bit different. I was an art major, but knew I wanted to go to medical school. Maybe I came to that decision maybe my second year or third year. So then took all the undergrad requirements along with the art major requirements, the pre-med requirements, and then went to med school at Mount Sinai in New York. And then I'm doing general surgery residency now at Northwestern. So I was joking, it's sort of a little bit of a stretch of the imagination to call me a scientist, like me and with these smart guys. I always tell the med students I like general surgery because it's simple, even people like me can do it. But I have been involved in a lot of research during residency. I took 3 years and did sort of esophageal physiology, more clinical rather than basic science research. And then I also did a master's degree in education, and I'm interested in education research and sort of developing surgical simulators and curricula based around teaching procedures with simulators.
Hi, I'm Sherry Klein. I am a Senior Director of Clinical Pharmacology and Pharmacometrics at AbbVie, which is formerly Abbott. I study not only what your body does to a drug, the pharmacokinetics, but what the drug does to your body, the pharmacodynamic aspects of it. And these days, my focus is on HIV research, renal disease, and men's and women's hormones. So very exciting time to be in the hormone area. I didn't take quite a straight path. So I graduated with a bachelor's degree in biology and didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I loved science, and I had done research when I was 16 and continued to do research at the university. So I got a job as a research tech at Northwestern University doing HPLC work, which was state of the art at the time. And it was a pharmacokinetics lab. And through that lab, they then taught me what has ended up being the love of my life, pharmacokinetics. I worked there for 5 years before I decided I wanted to go back to grad school. And I was lucky enough that one of the guys that I worked for, his next door neighbor, was the Associate Dean of Graduate Studies for University of Illinois School of Pharmacy, and they had a new faculty member who was coming in who did population pharmacokinetic research. And she was just finishing up her postdoc with one of the grandfathers of population PK. And so she and I started within about a week of each other at the university. I knew I was going to be her graduate student. Finished up my graduate studies and then went to work at Abbott Laboratories and have done a number of therapeutic areas over the last 13 years that I've been there, really getting to know the pharmaceutical industry and the various aspects of different disease states.
Great. So looking back at all of you guys sitting here, we have an interesting group of people with who've done some biology and biochemistry and physics, and I'm wondering what everyone on the panel here thought they were doing, what they wanted to do when they were a second and third year, and what kind of research they were doing, if you're involved in biochemistry research, or what kind of research things were you doing at the University of Chicago. Do you want to start, Alex?
Yeah, sure. So I worked in 2 different labs. I did ion channel stuff, or biophysics research in the biochemistry department with Professor Bezania. I think he's still there. And then I worked in a more like chemical biology, more chemistry-oriented lab, doing peptide synthesis. So I mean, when I first joined the lab, I really didn't know what to expect. But I can tell you that like it really depends on the advisor and the other students and the postdocs in the lab on what the culture is, and it's very important to identify someone that you can work with and that you can talk to. I mean, besides just finding a good area, or a subject that you enjoy. So I thought I would end up in academia, just sticking in like pure science, like organic chemistry or something like that, but I ended up doing applied science or engineering. So it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do, but I mean, Chicago was a very good foundation for giving me the skills for research.
For myself, I got involved in research in my, I think the summer after my second year. I poked around in the physics department and looked for people that were going to take me for the summertime. And I got sent to Arizona and worked on some telescopes there, pulling cables to assemble telescopes, but also getting to know the people, the observers, the astronomers that were doing research. And so I worked there for 2 years and doing some research, Monte Carlo simulations and programming, and that influenced my decision to go to grad school in astronomy. So I think, Sherry, you've been doing research since you're 16, you said. So what about at the University of Chicago? What kind of work were you doing?
So at the university, I had 2 different jobs. The first was in a neuropharmacology lab. And I'll tell you, I did not enjoy it. It was doped up rats, moving them into these behavior chambers, then moving them back out. I got to do a little bit more as I spent more time in that lab, where I started to do some of the graphics for them and start to analyze the data and get into the cool part of it. But it was really at the Clinical Research Center. I spent a couple of years there, where they gave me some incredible opportunities. So, you know, there were some, you know, kind of easy stuff to do in the lab, some routine assays that I worked on. I helped their administrator with a couple of things. But then I spent a summer where I got to do all these really cool special projects. So one of the projects I worked on, I went to the Illinois State Psychiatric Institute and was working on a rating scale for schizophrenic patients. So I just sat and observed. I had 2 different patients that I was assigned to for the summer. And there was, one of the patients was going to be institutionalized for life. The other patient that I observed, I actually got to see differences because they changed her medication throughout the summer. And so I remember starting, and she was very catatonic, and then, you know, as the summer progressed, she became much more interactive. And, you know, I looked at her and said, you know, she's one of the few people who actually might get to go home. And another project that I worked on that I remember very clearly was looking at peptides following C-section. And so I got to observe a C-section and go in and then collect the cord blood from that. So it's one of those things where when you get involved in a lab, you will oftentimes find that there are other opportunities that are presented to you based on what your interests are. That advisors will oftentimes go out of their way to find things that are a good fit for you.
I think that's a good point. And when you get started in research early, you can find out what you, maybe not what you like, but also what you don't like. So that's a good point. And generally, I found that the professors at University of Chicago, and you know, if you ask somebody about their work, their own work, they really want to talk about it. So, you know, feel free to approach any of the faculty. Jeff, did you do research when you were an undergrad?
I did a little bit of plant hormone research with I just checked, he's still alive. His name is Manfred Rudat. He's an emeritus professor, great guy. Had a wonderful experience. He actually let me continue to work in his lab even after I almost destroyed it. So I was not, he didn't completely discourage me from doing research at that point, which was a good thing.
So now you have to tell us how you almost destroyed the lab.
So he had no research funding whatsoever. I mean, we used to rinse out Kim wipes and capillary pipettes. The lab was antiquated, to say the least, and one of the first things that we were doing was cleaning up some reagents, and he had on the shelf a half a liter a glass bottle filled with mercury, elemental mercury, and I went to pick it up and had no idea how much elemental mercury weighs, what the density of it is. So I literally went to pick it up, and it weighed literally 30 pounds, and it just slipped out of my hand. And we spent, probably the next week or so scooping up mercury from the laboratory. But again, he was a great guy and just never yelled, never got upset, and he was very accepting of such a klutz. It was not completely dissimilar from a number of other research experiences I had over the years.
So maybe what not to do.
Excuse me?
What not to do.
What not to do, yeah. I would never say that I have great hands. You know, I always, being a lab manager now, one of the things I value.
But you're a surgeon though, right?
No, I'm not actually. Thank goodness for that. Many patients rejoice in that. One of the things that I value the most in people that work for me is having good hands. I mean, some people just have the knack of getting things to work at the bench, and other people like me, for instance, have a knack of not being able to get things to work at the bench. And it's a remarkable skill, having good hands. And I'm not sure what the ultimate arbiter of it is. Perhaps that people are just focused and not distracted. But surprisingly enough, I managed to get a PhD in laboratory and keep working and not burning anything down, and eventually finding a place where I didn't have to do my own bench work, which was a good thing.
So Ezra must have really good hands, I imagine, since you're a surgery resident. Hopefully you have really good hands. And you have, you know, I think probably one of the most unique backgrounds is having that degree in art, doing art. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of what research that you were interested in, or where you were at when you were a second and third year at the University of Chicago?
Yeah, sure. So I was sort of towards the beginning of college, I was thinking I might want to be a physics major and physicist. And once it got to be sort of more theoretical, and I sort of like things I can see and think about objects and stuff like that, I guess. So once it got to be more math-based, and I didn't really like it as much. So I was thinking then of medical school. So I worked over the summer. I did 2 research projects, I guess, between first and second year, and then second and third year. The first one was in a cardiovascular physiology lab studying blood clotting, different drugs in animal models. So it was pretty intensive basic science, and it was interesting, but I could tell that wasn't really my passion. So the next summer I did something totally different, which is I worked on qualitative research, sort of examining how physicians talk to patients about withdrawing care when they're dying in the hospital. So about as different as basic science as you could be, and I like that much more. And so sort of that experience, I knew from then on I wanted to go to medical school, and because I really like the patient interaction, human side of medicine. But interestingly, the same skills applied to both experiences, and I think whether you're doing qualitative research or the most basic of science research, it's really the same analytical skills and thought process and reasoning that makes good researchers and good scientists. So I think it was nice to see both.
Yeah, having a PhD in astronomy and now working in the Department of Medicine, there's a lot of transferable skills, and you're not really locked in. I think that's really good advice, that you're not locked into whatever major you choose. Or it used to be concentration when we were at the university. It was concentrations. We didn't have majors. It was concentrations. So I think everybody up here went to grad school or med school, right? Is that correct? So what made everybody kind of want to go to grad school or med school? I think for me personally, I went to grad school right out of the University of Chicago, and I wasn't sure what else to do. And I kind of wanted to, keep doing research a little bit more. I knew I didn't want to do physics grad school because that seemed really hard. But astronomy is pretty cool and a little bit more romantic and a little more, you can explain it to people, so I liked that. So I went to, I don't know. You can see astronomy. So I went to astronomy grad school because I didn't want to go to physics grad school, and I didn't know what else I wanted to do. And when I was in Arizona, I saw the night sky, and if you've never seen a dark night sky, it's very different from what it looks like here in Chicago. So that really made me want to sort of research all the other things that are up there that we don't know about. But I went to grad school primarily because I didn't know what else to do. But I'm glad I went. So what about you guys? Jeff?
Yeah, similar story. Fear of the real world, and not exactly knowing what else to do. But I think, again, being at the University of Chicago does point you in that direction. I mean, it really makes you love learning and love the idea of investigating things. So after I figured out that biology, even though bench science wasn't necessarily my forte, biology was. I really enjoyed thinking about biology. So it seemed like a natural thing to do to go to graduate school and get a PhD in biology. I think that I don't regret it at all at this point.
So you're, Alex, currently in graduate school.
Yeah.
So how's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. Well, I would say my reasons for going to grad school are similar to everyone's. So I took a break after I graduated. So I worked for 3 years, and the reason I went was due to my boss. I had a really awesome boss. It's an Italian guy from Naples. Kind of bombastic and arrogant, but he was a pretty cool guy.
This is your advisor right now?
No, my former boss.
Okay.
When I was a lab tech. So we come in the morning and have an espresso, get going, and then you just had like a really awesome approach to solving scientific problems, and like you just had like this awesome passion. So I just like really got into it, and he really pushed me to further my education.
Nice. It's important to have, I think, those sort of mentoring people.
Yeah, he was a very good mentor.
What about Sherry?
I was a little more indecisive. I spent 5 years between undergrad and graduate school, and for me, one of the impetuses to going back to school was they offered me a lab manager position, and I had to say to myself, do I want to be a lab technician for the rest of my life? Because it was comfortable. I was good at it. I could, it was easy. Or do I want to do something else? So then, my husband and I started talking about, okay, do I want to be a stay-at-home mom? I also considered becoming a midwife. And then the third was the area where I was a research technician is a pharmacokineticist. And I was really enjoying what I was doing. I was doing the analytical chemistry part in the morning, getting all my runs ready for the day, and then I had to wait until the end of the day to put it on the machine to run overnight. So one of the other grad students and I did the pharmacokinetics textbook together. And then they started letting me do some of the real analyses. And I said, I really want to learn more about this. And that's when I decided I wanted more out of life. A technician, like I said, I was good at it. You get direction from somebody else. You do what you're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, I wanted to be one of the people, sitting around the table saying, what are we going to do next? So I always knew that I wanted just a little bit more. And I think one of the nice things about the University of Chicago education is it really teaches you how to think. You are taught to question, to dig a little bit deeper, and I think that's in most of us that we're not going to be satisfied with just doing. We want to be the one deciding.
It's very life of the mind. I had to use the phrase, right? I had to use the phrase. Did you ever think about going and getting a PhD, Ezra? You were med school from the start.
Yeah, no, I never did. It was more the sort of clinical side of medicine that interested me. But even within medicine, my ideas of what I wanted to do changed pretty much 360 degrees. When I started, I thought I wanted to do primary care, geriatrics, and palliative care, sort of end-of-life care. And then in med school, I ended up loving general surgery, like operating the abdomen, which is somewhat different. Although, again, just like research, different types of research, different types of medicine, the same skills apply. So I think that was sort of my path. And then I never thought I was going to actually do research. I always thought of myself as someone who would just be a clinician. And then in residency, I took 3 years and did physiology research and education research. And I realized that being the person, however small an area, the person who knows the most about one little thing in the world and is sort of pushing the edge of what people know in that one tiny little thing is kind of neat, rather than just being, someone who does the same job as 1,000 other people.
So I think, having that sort of research background is the freedom that you can sort of choose. You can choose whatever you're working on. I think, it's a fun job, I think. So I think a couple of us have mentioned that we have had sort of people in our lives that were sort of influential. You with your former boss sort of pushed you into doing research. The way that I got out of astronomy into the current job that I have now, actually, so I'm a researcher at the Center for Data Intensive Science in the Department of Medicine, is that I went back to my 5-year reunion at the University of Chicago, and being the nerd I was, I went to the Uncommon Core talks, so you could go to lectures by professors, and I saw a talk about big data from Robert Grossman, and I thought, whoa, this is so cool, all the stuff that you can do in big data, and how there's big data in astronomy, the LSST, there's big data in genomics, and it's all big data. It's such a buzzword now, right? but I knew that I wanted to work, for someone like that, and I kind of kept my eye out for him, and I kind of stalked him. And he ran a program here at the University of Chicago that taught grad students skills in big data analysis and cloud computing and that kind of stuff. And so I got involved with a program that he was running there, and then he hired me into my current position, which was really great. And so I think having somebody that you sort of look up to and help you out can move you through your career, I guess. Does anybody else want to share a story about sort of how they got to where they were by people, other people that were influential for you? Sherry?
So I had two people who were really instrumental, and when I did my PhD, you have your dedication at the front, and they are listed there, and I actually ended up sending my PhD thesis to both of them to let them know that I had made it. The first was the researcher that I worked with when I was 16. To give a high school student that opportunity, I think that just the trust that he had in me. And he let me explore things a little bit further each time. So I would spend my summers in his lab. And so, I would learn a couple skills the first year, and then the second year I would learn more skills. And so he kept me engaged in that process, particularly when I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. But, he had at least given me that research skill set that I, still use to this day. And then the second was the group that I worked with at Northwestern University between undergraduate and graduate school, because they really formed the direction. They got me interested in this field of pharmacokinetics. And then they hooked me up with the woman who was my advisor. And it was just kind of fortuitous that one of the guys lived next door to the Associate Dean of Graduate Studies at University of Illinois School of Pharmacy, and they were bringing in somebody who did population PK. And so that, I think, was really instrumental for deciding what career path I would go on.
So I think a lot of it can be, a lot of us have said we weren't sure what we wanted to do, or we went to grad school because they didn't know what else to do. And you sort of stumble along a path from talking to other people, I think, and meeting other people and doing things like this, taking the next step, and going to your alumni reunions. So, Jeff, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I really look back at my third year in college as pivotal. I had some amazing professors that really shaped who I am right now. One was Lynn Throckmorton, who was he was an invertebrate biologist, and it was literally the best course I ever took. We would go on field trips. He would get lost. He would draw these incredibly complicated diagrams on the blackboard with 20 different colored chalk, and we'd have to be sitting there drawing it with our colored pencils. And one thing that always stuck in my mind was he always professed that you really couldn't know the invertebrates until you've eaten them all. But just a tremendous, tremendous guy. I also remember I got a B+ in that course, and I thought it was the best B+ I'd ever gotten. I think I got the best grade of anybody in the class, but it was still only a B. Nick Cozzarelli was the guy who introduced me to molecular biology. It was a big lecture course, and again, an incredible lecturer. He ended up becoming head of the National Academy. He died about 10 years ago, and just an amazing lecturer, and just totally stimulated me into, okay, wow, DNA, it's so cool. Those two people really led me from, thinking about, well, gee, do I want to keep reading Dostoevsky for the rest of my life, or do I want to do something a little bit different? And I think that, again, third year in college was truly pivotal for me.
I think several of us have commented about sort of the impact of research work on people. I think that is sort of a common theme about what's going on here, and sort of a curiosity, but also a lot of trying to help people. I think that was what moved me from astronomy to sort of the data science in health. And so, what do you guys think about how research impacts people, I guess? Some people will say that, oh, you do research and you become an academic and you sit in your lab and you're very sort of self-contained and you publish and no one reads your papers. Maybe that's one idea of research. What do you guys think about the impact of what you're doing, I guess? Or how happy are you with that?
So I probably, other than the physician sitting next to me, get to see a direct impact of what I do on patients' lives. I have worked on medications that have made it onto the marketplace that cure patients of disease. I've worked on HIV for a number of years, and I've seen that disease change from a death sentence to a chronic life condition. And years ago, I had the opportunity. We were doing a reformulation. You say, no big deal. You went from 6 capsules a day to 4 tablets a day. And when I was working on it, I was like, okay, it's a simple reformulation, not a big deal. But once we put it onto the market, starting to talk to patients, and they would talk about how this actually made a big difference. The capsules had to be refrigerated, so they couldn't, they couldn't keep them in their car, they couldn't hide them from their friends, they had to be in the refrigerator. So it made their disease very apparent. And then all of a sudden now they could keep it quiet to themselves. The other thing that just happened as we learned through the process is the capsule formulation had to be taken with food. The tablet formulation, you could take it with or without food. In the US, not a big a deal. In Africa, where a number of the HIV patients are malnourished, it was a really big deal. And it was better tolerated as well. And so, not only did I get to see the impact on patients here, but also globally as well.
So, Sherry, you're working in sort of the private sector, I guess. Jeff, do you think, doing research in academia,
yeah,
is that...
I'm in that category of in my office, nobody reading my papers.
Except for the reviewers that reject you, right?
I do work on human disease. I do work on breast and ovarian cancer. And I do clinical research that we enroll patients in. I'm not a kind of a people person, so I try to keep it as theoretical as possible. And it's never really been my goal to help humanity. But I can certainly see where some people might enjoy that.
Okay, that's one perspective. And there's a number of reasons why people do research in general. There's like a thirst for knowledge, and maybe the impact is, that's the great side effect of doing the research that you're doing. So, Alex, what about you in grad school?
Well, I definitely have that intellectual curiosity. I'm interested in solving, any kind of problem. But I think I moved from like pure science to applied science, and when you move from like chemistry to chemical engineering, then you can, use research to help humanity. So instead of just, making molecules that don't do anything, I'm designing drugs that could be used in new drug formulations to help treat human disease. So it has eventually a human objective.
So when you finish your PhD, do you think that you want to be in academia, or do you want to be in the private sector?
Well, I think I'm still far enough away from graduation that I haven't decided on what to do exactly, but I think, I would stay in industry, doing research and development in a pharmaceutical company.
Let's see, what else can we ask? Let's see. How about if we ask, what's one thing you would change about your path towards where you are today? Everybody can answer this one. You have to answer it. I'll go first. I think that I would have spent maybe a little bit more time doing other things other than physics, maybe when I was an undergrad, sort of having a more diverse background, I think. I wanted to learn, I didn't know what I wanted to do, really, but I just, I had that curiosity and I like to analyze data and that kind of thing. I think I would have spent a little bit more time, like, learning to program, for example, and I don't think people in physics generally get to do that. Or I also would have taken some HIPS classes. I thought that was really cool, the history and, what is it, history and philosophy of something and something? And isn't medicine in there too? But it's not in HIPS. Yes.
The question is, what does the I stand for?
Yeah, what is the I? It's HI? History? Hi?
Oh,
I don't know. But I didn't take it because there was a guy named Noel Swerdlow, and he was the professor at the University of Chicago. Did you laugh? But I looked at the reviews and I thought I shouldn't take that class. But I shouldn't have been afraid to take that class. It looked like an interesting class. So yeah, I would have tried to kind of diversify, I think, what I wanted, what I was studying. Maybe not too much physics, and try and have fun with some other classes, I think. What about Jeff?
What I would have changed from undergraduate? That's easy. I would have not moved off of campus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would have stayed in the dorms if I had to do over again. It was the worst year of my life, but the best year of my life, the first year in dorms. I think I missed out on a lot of things by moving off campus.
What dorm did you stay in?
Pierce.
In Pierce.
it's no more.
It's no more.
They mercifully destroyed it.
That's the one with the bay windows because there wasn't enough space, right? It was legally, you needed the bay windows to
I think it was also the site of too many suicides or something. I don't know. It was a bad one.
I see it in the Shoreland. The Shoreland was nice. We had a lake view. So, Alex, do you want to talk about?
I was in Shoreland too, actually.
Oh, nice. What house? I was Fishbein.
Philby.
Okay.
10th floor. What would I change? I don't know. I think I spent too much time in the lab. I think I should have joined more RSOs and, pursued other interests that I have, like music or tennis or something like that. Languages.
Too much time studying biochemistry?
Yeah, too much time in the lab. I spend all my time in the lab now, so I could have done something better.
Okay. What about you, Ezra?
I think
you'd still do art?
Oh yeah, definitely. That was a sort of a good choice that I made. I thought, I really like painting and drawing and art and thinking about art, and this might be the last chance I ever get, which is unfortunately, sadly, sort of turned out to be true, to do it for a dedicated period of time. So that was a good choice. I think more abstractly, something I've learned more recently, even after medical school in residency, is just when you're doing something, whatever it is, whatever you're learning about, to really take ownership and initiative of what you're studying. Because, I got to the point where I realized that the people teaching me this are not any smarter than me, and someone just taught them it, and now they're just regurgitating it to me. And that's what research is really all about, is just questioning everything that you're being taught, and bringing your own unique perspective to trying to solve these problems, and not letting other people sort of dictate what you're thinking about and what you're doing, just sort of taking ownership of it yourself.
That's great advice.
So I probably had too much fun as an undergrad, which is why it took me so long to get to graduate school. And that's probably my one regret, is that I didn't buckle down sooner. I truly love what I do, and so I'm glad that I took that path. But I think I might have been happier if I found that path a little sooner in life. Maybe 2 to 3 years would have been better for me to kind of be ready for school again instead of 5, because then I was, the old grad student. But since it took me to where I am today, I'm not sure I can regret it too much. The one thing I will say about, expanding your opportunities that you have, one of the things that I did as an undergrad my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, was an economics major. And he used to say that his mother wasn't so smart. And I thought that he would say that just because his mom didn't know the same things that his dad knew. So I took the economics series, a full year, three trimesters, 3/4 of it. And it actually, that work that I did in the economics class came back to me many years later. I had worked at Abbott for a year when my VP called me into his office and he said, we're working on this pain compound and we're having some issues, and I think a utility model might be one of the ways that we can look at it. And go, oh, I remember utility modeling from my economics class. So I went back home that night, went and looked through the textbook, got myself up to speed. And it was my first President's Award that I won through my work, was because I knew utility modeling from an economics class that had nothing to do with biology.
Very nice. So success comes from all different backgrounds.
Yeah, yes. you never know what you're going to use later in life.
That's true. So let's ask, what sort of qualities, if you're reviewing, I guess candidates for graduate school, or looking to hire somebody from this class at UChicago, what sort of qualities do you guys think are most important? That's kind of a hard question. I don't know. How do you characterize curiosity? What skills do people need?
That's a good question. Again, I think our little panel here really shows the diversity of things. I don't think there's any one profile. I think somebody who brings a seriousness to the task, but not to the exclusion of all else. You need to be at least partially rounded. I think a lot of UC undergraduates, at least when I was there, were not particularly well-rounded people. They were really somewhat one-dimensional. I think I was very one-dimensional as well. So I would say, seriousness, but willingness to laugh and have fun. I think you need to enjoy what you're doing. I think if it's a grim task, that's not necessarily a good thing. You need to really embrace it and have fun with it.
Any advice for applying to grad schools? You've done that recently.
Yeah, well, I can say what I've noticed. I've noticed that communication is very important, and being able to write effectively and communicate your ideas in a very precise way. For writing manuscripts, summaries of your research, or orally presenting your work, going to conferences. I mean, that's how you eventually get a job after graduation. You have to effectively present yourself.
That's good advice. I think your research has no impact if you're not pushing it out to other people. So you really have to work on good communication and scientific writing. Do you guys have any more thoughts about?
I think now I've worked with I've gotten to the point where there's people under me sort of working both clinically and on research. So I think the big thing for me that distinguishes really good medical students and undergrads from not so good ones is just their approach to things. I would say optimism versus what I'd call moping around. So people who are really good at what they do are just excited to be there, and no matter what they're doing, whether it's the most changing the dressing or just cleaning up a patient who just stooled all over themselves, they go about it with I'm going to do the best job possible, I'm going to learn something from this. Whereas the people who are not so good are just all right, I'm doing what I've been told to do, and they can't creatively think of how am I going to learn from this experience.
So fortunately or unfortunately, I'm in a group where we do a lot of hiring. And so the first thing I look for is knowledge. But the second thing I look for is communication skills, because I can be the smartest person in the room, but if I can't convey those ideas and get someone else to agree with me, it's not going to do me any good. So that's part of my job, is to go out and say, this is what we have to do and this is why we have to do it. And I'm always having to convince somebody else that this is the right thing. So for me, that's a big thing. I will tell you the one interview question I always ask, and I think this gets to some of the intellectual curiosity, like how do you decide this? I always ask people to give me some situation, whether it was in graduate school or otherwise, where something that they were working on that gave them a great deal of personal satisfaction. Because I want to know, what is it that motivates somebody? And usually through that example of the situation, I will find out something about their personality and what's driving them. So.
Good question.
I'd like to add one more thing. I think it's really important to be a finisher. You got to finish stuff. That's a very common flaw that a lot of students have, is not being able to finish. I mean, you see it at not finishing thesis, not finishing papers, not finishing projects, and it's not something you can tell up front necessarily. I mean, even if you've got your name on a couple of papers as an undergraduate, that doesn't necessarily mean you're the one who finished it. It's incredibly important to be able to actually put the stamp on, finish it, get it out the door.
I think that goes along with what Ezra was saying earlier about really taking ownership of your research, and that you have to have that vision to see a project and what research question you're asking, and to know when you're sort of approaching an answer, and to know when you have some deliverable that you can give to other people. I know when I was in graduate school, I spent so much of my time, actually, maybe I went to 2 or 3 conferences a year, I think, all over the world, which was really nice. In astronomy, you can travel a lot because there's telescopes in the southern hemisphere and there's telescopes all over the place. So I spent a lot of time working on projects that sort of with the idea of, okay, what's the end product? What's the paper I'm going to write? What's the poster? What's the sort of answer? Not really answer, but what is interesting to other people, and that sort of that helps to sort of direct your research goal, I guess, I think. And so I spent a lot of time giving talks and doing posters and stuff at conferences. Yes.
Yeah, the interesting things are not on the poster. The interesting things are talking to the people who author the poster.
That's
because that's where you get, the poster shows the success. The discussion shows where things didn't work as well.
Yeah. So I guess we can ask how important, this is the very life of the mind, UChicago. We're all about research and asking questions. And how important do you think it is to have a PhD, for example, if you want to be in research, an MD or a PhD? Do you think that going to grad school and having a PhD is something that you need to be in research, or to be successful in research? Anybody have thought about that? Well, if you're going to academia, you definitely need a PhD.
The answer is yes.
If you're going into the pharmaceutical industry, a PhD is a yes.
Yes, so everybody.
There are job opportunities for bachelor's and master's degrees, but they only get up to a certain level. And to go beyond that level, you need to have a PhD.
Do you think it's more just
or a PharmD or an MD?
Having the title, or is it the process of going to grad school and finishing your dissertation? Or what seems to be more important? I think almost a PhD, just the title.
You have to have the title, but it also, again, it goes back to the idea of finishing. There are a lot of great scientists whose greatest work lies in their lab notebooks and never makes it beyond their lab notebooks, never made it into a thesis, never made it into a paper. So just the getting of the PhD signifies that you have finished something, and that's, I think, that's key. Obviously, the degree is also of importance.
I think it also demonstrates independent thinking. So when you finish a PhD, it is your PhD. It is not your advisor's PhD. It is yours.
It's about that taking ownership again.
Yeah.
Taking ownership of your project and directing your own research. So maybe.
Oh yeah, because advisors would let you linger as long as you want.
Yeah, you're cheap labor, basically. So you can work there forever. I found that you know, when I was in graduate school, there were a couple people in grad school there that were there, you know. You don't want to say n number of years, right? And you can end up staying there for a very long time. And you really have to, you know you're ready to graduate when you kind of say that I'm done with this, I guess. And you really have to look at your project and know that it's enough, and know you have to be the expert. I mean, at that point, when you're doing your PhD, you know more than your advisor. You better know more than your advisor, or you're not going to finish. So, yeah, taking ownership of your research is very important. What do you guys think about your sort of work-life balance, I guess, in research? I know I take my work home with me all the time, being an academic, and I'm always on my computer, and everything's on the cloud. I'm always doing stuff in the cloud. So I find it very difficult to separate, I guess, from my research. What do you guys think about your career and your work-life balance? I guess Sherry has a...
I have 3 children. So the good news about having 3 kids is that I know that there's a certain point in time that I have to go home. And my children deserve some of my time. So I try to separate my life from my work. So when I'm at the office, I am 100% focused in on my work. And so I'm generally there 10, 11 hours a day, 5 days a week. I try not to bring too much home, but after the kids go to bed, I do have to go online, make sure nothing urgent has happened. That, you know, regulatory agencies across the world, they don't wait for us to go to bed. They require answers. So I'll check on it on the weekends. I try to leave things to Sunday night to work on. You know, I'd love to work part-time and be at home a little bit more, but I know that that would never happen with me. I'd still be working, so why not just work full-time?
So Ezra, are you on call right now? How's your work-life balance?
No, well, this is like the one day off of this month for me, so I probably shouldn't be the one talking about a work-life balance. But no, all joking aside, I mean, surgery residency is a lot of work, and it's long hours. But I think regardless of what you're doing, it is important to have relationships, especially outside of the work. I think having friends and family who you have, you know, very close relationships with outside of what you're doing at work is very important, because if you can easily get, I mean, if I go to a bar with like 5 surgery residents, we end up just talking about surgery all night long. And and then at the end of the night, you're like, oh, that was a little depressing. So you know, you have to have relationships and outside of work, and not just talk and think about it all the time.
So, Alex, do you want to talk about how grad school's beating you down?
Yeah.
How he
I'm in a horrible state right now. No, I think the point is to be excited about what you do, and, you know, take ownership of it, and, like, you know, just enjoy it. And so, I mean, then you won't get stressed out about, like, your advisor emailing you at 1 in the morning on Saturday about you know, your newest paper or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I think I probably work about 50, 60 hours a week. I'm in there on the weekends sometimes, but yeah, I think the lab now is like my second home. You know, I'm in there, futzing around, having fun. So, but, you know, I still have a lot of good family and friend connections, and that keeps me grounded. So,
I got 2 emails from my advisor over Christmas break asking for papers.
yeah.
But
I only got 1. I was surprised.
I didn't answer the first one.
Okay.
But you really have to, I think, like what you're doing and find something that you like, because you're probably going to be immersed in it. Jeff, do you want to add anything?
Again, I guess my perspective is the long haul, and if you're going to be in it for the long haul, you have to figure out a way to do it. You have to figure out a way to balance your life in a way that works for you. I certainly know plenty of scientists who are just so dedicated that, you do get email from peers at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, ridiculous hours. But then again, there are plenty of people out there who have really beautiful, balanced life. I think, again, it's an individual thing where whoever you are, you have to find if you plan on doing this for the rest of your life, you have to figure out the best way to do it.
And everyone up here is still doing research, so they must be pretty happy where they are. I think now we might open it up to some questions. We've been just talking at you guys, so feel free to poke away. Do you have a question?
If you know what you want to do it. Don't wait. If you're uncertain, then try to figure out something that will lead you to a better certainty about what you're doing. I mean, you don't want to go to graduate school because I don't have anything better to do with my life. Present company excluded, of course, but wouldn't recommend it, let's put it that way. You want to go to graduate school, it's a pain in the ass. You want to go because you really want to do it. So if you don't know for sure that you want to do it, then it's not a bad idea to take some time off and try to figure out if it's really what you want to do or not.
So I'll clarify that I went to grad school not because I didn't know what else to do. I knew that I really liked astronomy kind of research. I just want to know more about it in general. I thought, okay, well, grad school is a way to know more about astronomy. We'll learn more about astronomy. And I specifically, I started a program where I had a huge range of experts in that department. There are people that did planetary stuff. There are people that did like Milky Way, extragalactic cosmology. And so to me, that sounds like a wide range. Okay, so I sort of left the door open for myself. So I was working on, I chose the path that I wanted because I knew I wanted to learn more about it, but I still had some wiggle room, I guess. And so I knew that I knew that I wanted to learn more about astronomy, and I don't know how else you do that besides going to grad school.
But if you don't love what you do, you probably won't finish grad school, because grad school beats you down. I'm sure, I had a lot of low points during graduate school where I said, am I going to be able to finish this? The closer I got to finishing, the further it seemed to move away from me. And the process is designed to do that as well. Your advisor and the other professors around you, they are taught to question you. And so during that process, you start to question yourself.
I think I compared it, when we were in grad school, we compared it to Shawshank Redemption, basically, being at Shawshank. And then you have to crawl through the tunnel, to get to the end. But the good thing is all of us finished our degrees. So while it sounds like it's really, really horrible, but, everybody up here finished and they're happy at doing research. So
I think one thing that it sort of relates to your question is, I think it's a good idea to, know somewhat about the field and have a passion about it, but I think going to med school or graduate school, it's somewhat of a leap of faith. I mean, when I started medical school, I had no idea what being a doctor was like or what residency was going to be like, and you sort of just have to have a gut feeling that that's what you want to do. And then I think a good part and a sort of safety net is within any grad school or medical school, there's such a diversity of fields that as you learn more about the subject matter, inevitably, if you have a passion, you're going to find something that really interests you. So I think waiting years to try to figure out okay, this area of biology or chemistry is really what I want. You don't need to do that. I think just start and you'll find something that you love.
yeah, so that was rough. It's hard to find. Okay, I'll tell you that you can't just expect that you can, send your resume to the Department of Medicine and say, hey, I'm an astronomer, I want to work for you. It's not going to work at all, right? So the skills are transferable. I had to, sort of meet someone and sort of convince them that I was really interested and that I had sort of a, I had the skills, I guess. So I had to, it was through meeting people and talking to them. And so I did that little internship that I talked about and meeting the lab that I work in now. And, through that internship, we came up with some projects that I could work on. And you know, I was sort of hired as a research professional as like a 1-year thing, and they were just testing the waters with me, but now I can stay, so they're happy with me. But yeah, does that answer your question? Great.
So I am lucky enough that I am in a field where I didn't have to do a postdoc. The demand is still great enough in the pharmacokinetics field simply because there aren't that many academic sites doing it, unfortunately. You know, we would like a lot more universities to produce students. And so for me, it worked out well because then I could, you know, start working in industry right away. And one of the things about the pharmaceutical industry is nobody teaches a class on drug development. No company does drug development right. We all still fail. Drugs fail. Drugs fail in late stage. And so we're trying to get it right. We're trying to be smarter than all the other companies that are out there, but we're all in the same boat. So there's not one right way to do it. So that's why we have to convince management. The other thing, though, with convincing management is that the pharmaceutical industry works in a team environment. So I call it, you know, you got the pie. I am a specialist in this little piece of the pie. But I have to understand how all the other pieces of that pie affect my piece. And the second President's Award that I got at my company was because I was working on a project, and they were really struggling with it, and they were doing a series of animal experiments in discovery, and they were getting some inconclusive results, and they didn't know what to do next. And I said, oh, I think I can help with that. I think, you know, that looking at drug concentrations might have explained some of those differences. And so I did PK/PD modeling, and I actually proved it to the team that I could explain those differences. And so it was being able to, I call it the well-tuned ear that I have, listening for other things. Nobody came to me and said, well, I think pharmacokinetics can solve this problem. Can you solve this problem for me? No, I was in a meeting where people were saying, I'm having this issue. And me saying, oh, you know what? I might be able to look into that. And so that's, and then after you've had a couple of successes, people listen. Because you've now got a track record of being able to apply your area of research to find paths forward for other pieces of research. I'm not sure if that's...
Anybody feel strongly with that? I think I've been stumbling along, just always knowing that I want to learn more about whatever is interesting that day. And I haven't wanted to, I guess I know that I don't want to spend a lot of, you know, I guess I can't answer this question. I still don't know what I want to do with my life, I feel like. But I like to answer questions or like research a topic in general. And so, you know, I guess the moment is just knowing that I want to do more research, but I don't know what topic, I guess, for me.
I think for me it was in med school, third year, the first 2 years are in class, and then third year you're taking care of patients, or helping take care of patients, and you do a lot of rotations at different hospitals, you have a very different experiences, and it's sort of like a emotional roller coaster, because some are terrible, some are really good. You know, you can get really depressed, you're working long hours, you're not seeing your friends. And then when I did surgery, it was the last rotation, and I was waking up at like 3 in the morning to be at the hospital at like 3:30, literally. But it was so much fun, and I just, from the moment I woke up, like my eyes opened in the morning, I was thinking about it and thinking about the patients, and then until the moment I went to sleep, which was like 5 minutes after I left the hospital, I was still thinking about it, and at that time I knew, like, this is something that's really interesting and I love, and so I think it's sort of like a moment like that where you just can't get it out of your mind.
Yeah, the joke in my family is I say, oh, I'm going to be home shortly. And then like 2 hours later I come home.
Yeah.
And it's because I love what I do, that I get so engaged in it that I'm not looking at the clock. Some days I have to look at the clock because I have to pick up my kids, but then I set an alarm.
Do you have any more questions?
It might prepare you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the University of Chicago students, everybody's really good. You guys are all really, really high quality, knowledgeable people, and you're very life of the mind and you're sort of taught to ask questions, I think, and in grad school you're very much, asking questions. And I look back at UChicago and I just think how happy I was, but I don't think it was like that when I was there, probably. I'm far enough removed from it that it was like, wow, what a great time. I love UChicago. That's why I'm back here. But yeah, grad school was really hard. It was the worst time. I think it was much harder than UChicago.
I mean, I think you've got to understand the key difference is, you've got very closed-end piece of work that you're doing as an undergraduate.
Yes.
I mean, it's all pointed towards the term paper, the final exam, whatever it is. And, you do it, you're done, you got whatever grade you got, and you go on. With graduate school, you're trying to produce a piece of new science or a new piece of knowledge. And it's open-ended. And that's really completely different than being an undergraduate and taking a course. When I was a graduate student, I took 2 classes. It was an introductory molecular biology class and fencing. And the rest of the time I was doing research. I spent all that time in the lab banging my head against the wall trying to get a new piece of knowledge. And that is not something that you can model as an undergraduate at all. You don't get that experience as an undergraduate. You might be part of a team where they're doing this, but to have everything on you as far as what you're producing is going to dictate your success in graduate school is very, very different experience. And I think that's the shock that a lot of students feel when they go to graduate school is, wait a minute, I'm really smart, I know this stuff, I've got good hands, but the knowledge is not coming. I'm not producing the knowledge in a reproducible way, on a timeline. And that's the frustrating part that a lot of people feel in graduate school is that I know this. As we were saying, you know more than your advisor by the time you're done about that particular thing that you're working on, but that doesn't necessarily translate into getting, to having your PhD done. So I think that's really the key thing that you have to go in with your eyes open when you're going to graduate school is understanding that getting a PhD is not at all like taking a class.
So it's very much, I think, the theme of what we've been saying in terms of research is that you really have to, take ownership, take the lead. It's, when you start an undergrad, you kind of have a path that you follow, and there are directions, sort of directions for success, I guess. And then when you're in grad school and doing research on your own, and you're the expert, you're writing the directions for other people, basically. So you really have to be, and that's hard to move like over the hump of being comfortable with that's what you do. So I think, taking ownership and taking the lead. Are there any more questions? Otherwise, we'll leave you with our last words of advice. If you have any questions. So yeah, I think just from my perspective is, taking ownership. Whatever you're doing, be really passionate about it and ask questions. Ask questions to the people that you're working with or the faculty. They'll talk to you for hours. Find whatever field that you're interested in, know more about it, try and learn as much as you can from people, and then also, I take a lot of online classes, actually. I'm like really big into Coursera, so I love getting my online certificates. Even though I have a PhD, I'm like, I'm gonna go on Coursera and learn about something else. I, learn about whatever, virology or programming and that kind of stuff. So keep your mind and your eyes open and talk to people and try and get, more information everywhere you are, I guess. Any last words of advice from other people up here?
I would say that, it's sort of daunting. I remember thinking back when I was a student, undergrad student, I wasn't 100% sure that I wanted to go to medical school. It was all a little scary. But the great thing about grad school, I think, whether it's science or medicine, is that you're finally like in real life. In college, you're just given an assignment that 10,000 students before you have done before. It's not real. It's a false construct. You're just regurgitating something so that you can learn it. But then when you get to grad school or med school, like, that's real life. You're taking care of real people in med school, and in grad school, you're doing real science that's new. So that's, I think, even though you're working hard, it's invigorating to be doing something that is like real.
Anybody else? Alex?
Yeah, I just like to. Yeah, there's no syllabus for grad school. You write the syllabus. You have to be tenacious and come up with your own path. And like other people were saying, like it's easy to discover something new, but then to take it all the way to the goalpost is something completely different. And so it takes a lot of effort and a lot of patience.
So love what you do and take ownership.
Yeah.
Say, maintain a healthy skepticism, and not just of other people, but of yourself. Make sure that you don't fall in love with your own ideas to the point where you're just buying into a pattern that you've created just because you created it. It may be the greatest thing, it may be the next greatest thing, but stay skeptical about it.
That's good advice.
I guess I'll say learning doesn't stop with school. We bring in experts in the field, and I learn all the time new things. I learn new things from recent PhDs that we bring into the department, and that's what's keeping me growing as a scientist, is continuing to learn. Whether it's in a formal online course or just informal, I think the University of Chicago education prepares you for lifelong learning.
Perfect. Thank you guys all for coming. Can you give a round of applause to our panelists?